If an entrepreneurial PT was like having dinner with their friend who's a primary care, right now, the extent of those conversations, if they have happen at all, are probably about referral relationships where it's like, hey, can you put me on the PDF that you give out or whatever? But it could go one step further theoretically, or hypothetically, it could go one step further to say, hey, I want to put one of my PTs in one of your offices. That just seems like too simple, though. I wonder why. Maybe this is the rhetorical question, I suppose, unless you want to take a stab at it. It's like, I wonder why that hasn't happened yet.
It's just the physician and the culture of going to your physician first, which was in that piece. It explained that consumers, number one, don't care a rat's you know what about direct access. It means nothing to them. And that the vast majority of healthcare consumers still think that their PCP has to refer them to physical therapy. We're not changing that by direct access, but we think we have. And this community and this profession, I think, believes that we are getting a high enough volume of patients, or that we're capturing many of them. We haven't scratched the surface of the number of individuals that we could be managing if that relationship between PCP and PT and OT were stronger, number one. Number two, that physician who would bring a therapist in-house in fee-for-service is going to first do the math and make sure in their mind, or try to figure out, if I do this, is this going to reduce my own E&M visits? Because patients will start to realize that they can just book with the PT and skirt me. If it's going to reduce their E&M visits, and it's 30%, let's say, anything that a PT could and is appropriate to see first, why would they do that? The best chance is to, yes, where you have a relationship, where a physician is considering going into a value-based care relationship, helping to support that from the beginning as a partner in that exercise. New physicians who don't yet have, aren't so used to the system that they're going to be thinking, oh, this could potentially impact my fee-for-service volume. And to go back to the ANOVA, because I'm glad you brought that up, where this topic overlaps with the site-neutral payment topic. So for listeners, let me just cover real quickly site-neutral payments. So right now, hospital outpatient practices, anything that is owned by the health system, as long as that relationship, that purchase of an outpatient physician practice was before a certain year, which I won't remember, the billing is the same as the billing as would be in the hospital. This is why hospitals and health systems went out and bought practices like crazy, right? Now, there's no incentive to go into full risk if you're not a great incentive if you're one of those practices, right? You are definitely making out better if you're a health system owned physician practice by continuing the fee for service billing and maybe getting a little bit benefit on the back end with a little bit of shared savings and risk. But we're in a new world where we have a populist Republican sentiment who is ready to act on site-neutral payments. And this is not, I can't make any predictions, but it is absolutely something that is being discussed regularly, now more than ever, because the political paradigm is changing and because there is a lot of money stuck in site-neutral payments, right? Hundreds of billions, some estimate trillions of dollars. So when we start to separate health systems from physician practices, and physician practices are functioning not just as referral sources to specialists for that health system, because that's when you own a PCP practice as a health system, you want every possible referral to specialists. That's where they're making the bulk of their dollars. When you divorce the health system dollars from the physician practices and you force that separation, now everything changes, right? And the PCPs start to become their own business people again. And so where we're seeing full risk is where PCPs and team-based primary care are not owned by hospitals. They have the incentive to sometimes double and more their typical salary.
And maybe I'm not connecting the dots. That's counterintuitive to what I thought you were going to say. Yeah. So let me make sure I heard what you just said there at the end. You said that the risk is greater for the smaller practice. Is that what you just said?
The smaller practice that's independent is willing and it makes sense for them to go into full risk relationships with insurance companies, payers, I should say, right? Because then not only is there no longer the incentive to do a lot of referrals to specialists and, crank out fee for service volume, there's also the incentive to reduce hospitalizations. And when a health system owns the physician practices, they don't want reduction of admissions to the hospital. They have to fill their heads in beds. Hospitals are the most fee-for-service driven and any of the inpatient settings. So once you separate those things, which hasn't been able to happen because of the political environment, now that site neutral payments are bubbling up, and we're going to start chipping away at that because the federal government and those that are coming into power need money for what they want to do. Site neutral payments now are becoming a reality that we would fully expect to start chipping away. And then the paradigm is now ripe for more independent PCPs who want to make more money. And right now they're making much less than specialists, and their value, just like therapists, which I talked about in my newsletter article, their value to the health system, and I mean the health system writ large, right? Their value to healthcare delivery and to healthcare spend is so much higher than what they're making in fee for service. They reduce spend dramatically. Advanced primary care reduces hospitalizations by 40 to 50% in full risk. Think about how monumental that is. People aren't ignoring that. And physicians that are independent and are ready to take that leap, if I'm a PT in that community, I want to be part of that because they're the ones bringing in more money, and they're going to be making strategic decisions using data, who they want to partner with that's going to help them keep people out of the hospital, who is going to have excellent access to care, whether that's embedded therapists and or the practices around them. So it's impossible for me to imagine a scenario where what I'm suggesting is incorrect. I'm also watching it play out in front of me now. I'm seeing advanced primary care groups absolutely wildly successful at reducing other spend. We want to be on the side as therapists of joining in this crusade to prevent people from being in the hospital. Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we as a profession want to do that? It's for our mission of what we do, to realize the value and really demonstrate and be able to benefit from that value.
If you'd like to learn more about Strata PT and see how our EMR and RCM works, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo.